Before you ever step into the arena, before the crowds scream your name, before someone throws flowers at your feet like you are the ancient Roman version of a sports celebrity, first, your life has to completely fall apart. That is the part the movies usually skip. Because becoming a gladiator was not some exciting career choice for most people. It was more like history's worst surprise job assignment. And Rome had many ways to recruit new fighters. Honestly, the Roman Empire was very creative when it came to ruining somebody's day. Maybe you were captured during a war. One bad battle. One wrong village. Suddenly your home is burning, your hands are tied, and now you are walking hundreds of miles with chains rubbing your ankles raw. Or maybe you were a criminal, a thief, a rebel, a deserter from the Roman army. Rome loved punishment almost as much as it loved olive oil. And if you were poor enough, desperate enough, or drowning in debt badly enough, you could even volunteer. Which sounds insane today. But ancient Rome was not exactly full of good job opportunities. There was no work-from-home option in the empire. No cozy little coffee shop where you could open a laptop and complain about emails. Instead, if life cornered you hard enough, some people willingly signed contracts to become gladiators. They traded freedom for food, shelter, and maybe, if they survived long enough, fame. That last part mattered more than you might think, because Romans were absolutely obsessed with gladiators. Children collected little oil lamps with gladiator pictures on them. Wealthy women admired famous fighters. People scratched names of successful gladiators into walls like ancient sports fans. One gladiator named Celadus was apparently called the Sigh of the Girls, which honestly sounds less like a warrior title and more like a Roman boy band member. But before any fame happened, first came the journey into slavery. And that journey was brutal. If you were captured in war, you would likely be marched with hundreds of others across rough roads under armed guard. Food was limited. Water was worse. Some prisoners died before reaching the city. Rome conquered huge parts of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. And every conquest created more prisoners, more human cargo, more future gladiators. Eventually, you would arrive at a slave market. Imagine standing in a crowded square while strangers inspect your body like you are livestock. They check your teeth, your muscles, old injuries, scars. People bid money on your future suffering while you stand there exhausted and terrified. And if you looked strong enough, maybe broad shoulders, good height, healthy teeth, a gladiator trainer might purchase you. Congratulations. Your nightmare is now a business investment. The man buying you was called a lanista. And Romans had a strange relationship with these men. People loved gladiator games, but lanistas themselves were considered unpleasant, dishonorable, a little dirty. Kind of like if someone today ran a business where employees fought lions for public entertainment, which, to be fair, would probably still seem questionable. But the lanista did not care much about respect. Gladiators made money. A successful fighter could fill arenas and attract huge crowds. So once purchased, you would be taken to a gladiator school called a ludus. And this is the moment your old identity really starts disappearing. Your old name may no longer matter. Your home is gone. Your family may never see you again. You now belong to the arena. Some gladiators were branded with hot iron tattoos or marks to show ownership. Others wore metal collars stating who they belonged to if they escaped. Not exactly subtle. Roman society also labeled gladiators as infamous. That word basically meant you had lost social dignity. Actors, prostitutes, and gladiators were all placed in this category. Even if crowds adored you, respectable Roman society still looked down on you. So imagine the strange emotional world you now live in. The public cheers for you. Children admire you. But society also treats you like damaged property. You are famous and disposable at the same time. And for volunteers, this was part of the deal too. Some free men willingly signed contracts giving owners control over their bodies. They accepted beatings, humiliation, and possible death in exchange for money or glory. That contract was called the Sacramentum Gladiatorium, and parts of it were terrifying. You basically swore to endure burning, chains, beatings, and death by the sword if necessary. Not exactly the cheerful paperwork you sign for a gym membership. But desperation changes people. If you had crushing debt, no social status, and no future, the arena might actually seem like a chance. A dangerous chance, but still a chance. And honestly, Roman society could be unbelievably harsh to the poor. At least gladiator schools provided regular food and shelter. For some people, that alone was enough to risk everything. Of course, once reality hit, many probably regretted it immediately. Because gladiator life was not heroic most of the time. It was controlled, strict, lonely. You slept in cramped cells behind locked doors. You trained until your muscles burned. You lived under constant discipline. And somewhere in the back of your mind sat one ugly truth. Sooner or later, people would gather in a giant arena to watch you fight another human being. Possibly to the death. And the crowd would eat snacks while it happened. That might be the strangest part of all. For Romans, this violence became normal entertainment. Just another afternoon in the empire. A day at the games. Maybe after breakfast. Maybe before dinner. And now you are part of it. Not a citizen in the crowd. Not a wealthy senator under shaded seats. You are the one walking into the sand. And the sand, over the years, had absorbed more blood than rainwater. So as the gates of the gladiator school close behind you for the first time, you slowly realize something terrible. Your survival no longer belongs entirely to you. It belongs to trainers, owners, crowds, emperors. And whether the man across from you in the arena is slightly slower with a sword than you are. Which is not a very comforting retirement plan. Especially because in ancient Rome, retirement often arrived point first at the end of a spear. The first thing you notice about the gladiator school is the noise. Not cheering, not dramatic music, just the rough sounds of people surviving together in a cramped place. Metal clanging somewhere in the distance. Boots scraping stone floors. Men coughing through the night. Someone groaning from an old injury that never healed right. And behind all of it, the strange smell of the ludus itself. Sweat, wet straw, blood. Probably not the relaxing spa experience you were hoping for. When you arrive at the gladiator school, you are not treated like a hero. You are processed like property. The guards move fast. Orders are shouted. New arrivals are separated, inspected, and assigned sleeping spaces. And those sleeping spaces are not exactly luxurious Roman villas. Most gladiators lived in tiny stone cells barely large enough for a bedroll and a few belongings. Some rooms had barred doors. Others were simply locked from the outside. Because no matter how famous gladiators became later, at the start, many were basically prisoners. You wake up where the school tells you. You eat when the school tells you. You train when the school tells you. Your entire life now runs on somebody else's schedule. At the center of this world is the lanista, the owner of the school, the man who purchased you. And the lanista was part businessman, part prison warden, part sports manager, and part deeply concerning human being. Some lanistas were cruel. Others were surprisingly practical. Because here is the strange thing. Gladiators were expensive. A strong fighter cost money to buy, train, feed, and maintain. So owners did not usually want them dying immediately. At least not before selling enough tickets first. This meant many gladiator schools were heavily organized. Some even had doctors, cooks, trainers, and structured routines. Still horrifying. Just organized horrifying. Most days began before sunrise. The school slowly came alive in darkness. Lamps flickered in hallways while sleepy gladiators dragged themselves awake. You would probably hear chains rattling somewhere nearby. Maybe the sound of wooden practice swords already striking training posts. There was little privacy, little comfort, and absolutely no sleeping in. Roman trainers believed discipline was everything. Not motivation, not inspiration, discipline. The same repeated movements over and over until your body obeyed without thinking. And if you failed to follow orders? Punishments came quickly. Whippings were common. Food could be reduced. Some fighters were beaten in front of others as warnings. The school needed obedience because fear controlled everything here. Not just fear of punishment, fear of the arena, fear of humiliation, fear of becoming weak. And weakness inside a gladiator school was dangerous. Because the other men around you were not really friends yet. Some were prisoners from foreign lands who barely spoke Latin. Others were criminals. Former soldiers, slaves, volunteers drowning in debt. Every man carried his own story. And most stories ended badly. At first, the atmosphere inside the school was tense and quiet. Nobody knew who could be trusted. Nobody wanted to appear weak. Imagine sitting beside 20 exhausted strangers while eating barley porridge in silence, all of you pretending not to notice the scars covering each other's arms. Not exactly a fun little team-building retreat. But over time, strange friendships sometimes formed. Gladiators trained together constantly. They suffered together. They watched each other survive injuries, punishments, and fear. And humans tend to bond in terrible situations. Even ancient humans. Especially ancient humans. Some veteran fighters even helped younger recruits survive the mental shock of the lifestyle. Because the first few weeks were often miserable. Your body hurts constantly. Your shoulders ache from drills. Your hands blister from weapons. Your sleep is interrupted by nightmares, shouting, or somebody coughing half the night beside you. And then there is the emotional side. Many gladiators had lost everything recently. Homes, families, freedom, entire identities. Imagine lying awake in your tiny cell while hearing distant cheering from the city outside. Rome continues happily without you. Markets open. People gossip. Children play in streets. Meanwhile, you are locked inside a training prison preparing to fight strangers for entertainment. That realization probably hit hard at night, especially in the quiet moments. And yet, strangely, the school also created routine. Humans can adapt to almost anything eventually, even terrible things. After enough days, the bizarre world of the ludus slowly starts feeling normal. You memorize schedules. You recognize the guards. You learn which trainers are cruel and which are fair. You learn where sunlight hits the courtyard in the morning. You learn which fighters snore loud enough to shake the walls. Small details become important because your world has become very small. Some gladiator schools were enormous, especially in major cities like Rome. The largest schools connected directly to arenas through underground tunnels so fighters could move unseen before games. Imagine walking those tunnels for the first time. Torchlight flickering across stone walls. The sound of crowds growing louder overhead. The smell of smoke and sweat drifting underground. That tunnel probably felt like walking toward another universe. One where your survival depended on strangers cheering loudly enough. And the Romans loved spectacle. The school constantly prepared fighters not only for combat, but for performance. Because gladiator battles were not chaotic bar fights. They were carefully organized entertainment. Crowds wanted drama, suspense. A boring fight disappointed people. So trainers taught posture, movement, timing, even how to fall properly after injury. In a strange way, gladiators were athletes, actors, and victims all at once. And somewhere during your first weeks inside the ludus, one uncomfortable truth becomes impossible to ignore. This place is designed to change you. Not just physically. Mentally too. Fear becomes routine. Violence becomes routine. Even the sound of suffering slowly becomes routine. That may be the most disturbing part. Humans can get used to almost anything if surrounded by it long enough. Even life inside a gladiator prison. Especially when there is no escape. Because escape attempts did happen sometimes. And the punishments were severe. Owners could not risk trained fighters running loose through Roman streets carrying combat skills and deep emotional issues. Which honestly is fair. That combination rarely ends peacefully. So security remained tight. Guards watched constantly, doors locked heavily. And every night as darkness settled over the school, the same reality remained waiting for everyone inside. Sooner or later, the arena gates would open. And when they did, all the training, all the pain, all the fear inside these stone walls would finally face the crowd outside. A crowd that wanted excitement, not mercy.